Hello, everyone. It's Charlene Lee here, and I was hoping to talk today about what it means to be a tired disruptor. And I don't know about you, but Monday morning is when I'm broadcasting this. It's always a great way to begin the week, thinking about what's ahead. But it's also you're kind of recovering from the weekend. You're kind of tired, and also you may just be tired because you've been disrupting so much. So today I want to talk about what does it mean to be a tired disruptor? How do you keep your energy up? How do you rejuvenate yourself? And very importantly, how do you keep your enthusiasm going, not only for yourself, but for everybody else in your organization? So as you're coming in and joining, please introduce yourself, what your name is, where you're coming in from, because I always love to hear where people are coming from, and also give an idea of how you're feeling these days when it comes to just being disrupted and disrupting yourself. Are you feeling energized and motivated, or are you feeling fatigued, exhausted, demoralized in some ways? Because some of us have been at this for a really long time. So again, I would love to hear where you're coming from. Welcome, Assad, for joining the broadcast. But I would love for you to introduce yourself, where you're coming from, and also how are you feeling about disruption. Again, because this is a really hard place to be in, especially with so many things going on. So what I'm going to talk about today are a couple of things. First of all, just give a couple of scenarios that I've been hearing from disruptors and how they have been feeling about disruption, how they're sharing with me how tired they are, and what they're doing to, again, get that enthusiasm going. I'll give you 3 solutions and ways to keep that focus, keep that energy up for yourself and your organization. And I'll have one takeaway at the end too as well. So I just want to say hello to a couple people. We have Max coming in from Italy. Welcome, Max. Lindsay, thank you so much for joining, and also an entrepreneur, a co-founder of Instapreneur. So thank you so much for joining today. Elix from Barbados. So this is great. This is wonderful to be able to have you all on here. I would love to, again, just keep it going in terms of the chat. I'll be constantly looking at the comments. But I also would love to hear again, how are you feeling about disrupting things? Now, Lindsay, how's it going with how do you keep that energy up as a founder? And I'll be sharing some ideas also from my experience having founded and run Altimeter. It is exhausting to constantly come to work every day and take on take on that burden of being that disruptor, being that leader. So let me talk about a couple scenarios that I have heard from some leaders share with me how they're feeling about disruption. One organization I was working with wanted to become more disruptive. They felt that they had lost their edge. And they said, we used to do this. We did this huge disruption recently, and we put everything into it, rallied everybody around. And they said, but we're just exhausted. We have disruption and change fatigue. We can't keep doing this. And I said, I could completely understand this. You guys have burnout. I mean, how long ago was this? And I was thinking maybe it was a couple months ago, maybe a half a year ago. And they said, oh no, it was 2 years ago. 2 years ago, we pulled out all the stops and we're still really recovering from that. And I pointed out to them, 2 years is a really long time in the cycle of business. In that time, they had been sitting on this major disruption, hoping that it would carry them through this whole time. But looking back on it, it was so hard, so disruptive to themselves. They didn't want to go through it again. Yeah, it was great. And they got the things accomplished, but it took everything out of them. So that's one cautionary tale around maybe being too disruptive too quickly that you never want to take it on again. And the second example is it was an organization that I recently worked with. And they said, we've been fighting for 10 years. We were the laggard in our industry. And we fought and we were climbing and climbing and climbing, going up. And finally, we won. We were like number 1 in market share. We beat all the other competition. And over the past 2 years, since they achieved that, the fight has gone out of the organization. They had the reason for being the challenger was no longer there. They had achieved it. So what was going to be their new focus? And so they were struggling with trying to say, how do we keep disrupting? Because now we're going to be disrupting ourselves rather than some challenger or the competition. And I think the third one that all of us are facing, the third scenario, is the fact that we have been through so much disruption over the past few months. We have been going through the pandemic disruption, the economic uncertainty disruption, and for many of us, the social justice disruption and the movements that are coming out of that. And so we're tired. We're 5, 6, 7 months into this, facing again, for some of us, maybe on vacation here in the month of August, rejuvenating ourselves and knowing that we're going to have 4 long months ahead of us going into the winter, and who knows what that world is going to look like. So this is exhausting just thinking about that. So I wanted to just pause for a second and just let that sink in. That we have so many ways of thinking about disruption, things are happening to us, but also the kinds of disruptions that we're trying to create ourselves. And let's acknowledge it is exhausting. So I want to say hello to a couple other people who have chimed in recently. Let's see, we've got Odair from Sao Paulo, Brazil. Thank you so much for joining here today. Adige from Morocco. And Tony, who is asking, what's disruption fatigue? And so this is less about, again, this is not so much, again, this is more about creating disruption. So the idea that you're trying to create change, huge amounts of change and growth in your organization, or the fact that you've been dealing with a lot of disruption. So this is one of the key things I think we're trying to deal with is how do you actually do this? We have Kurt coming in also talking about, basically we don't even know what's happening right now in terms of what's happening into the future. And then Andres coming in from New York City too as well. So what I'd like to do now is just go through and talk a little bit about what are some of the solutions I've been hearing from disruptors. From my research, this is what they're saying has really kept them focused and motivated. So the first one is to, instead of thinking about that focus of being the competition or your market share or a particular target growth or product you want to launch, because those things are fairly temporary. And they're not long lasting because once you achieve that goal, then what's the next one you're going to set? What I have found in doing my research for my latest book, The Disruption Mindset, it is this focus on the future customer and understanding what that customer is looking for and wants. The reason being, you're always going to have a future customer because the future keeps moving. So you focus today on building that product for the future and trying to navigate and understand what that future will look like. But always knowing that there's another customer, another opportunity that you can go to and satisfy. The reason why this is such a great focus for disruptors is that it goes through cycles. You have this push to meet a need, and then you can recalibrate, go back to a new constant and new normal of that disruptive behavior, reset, and then do it again. The disruptive organizations that are out there don't do bigger moves. They do a lot of smaller moves very, very quickly. So that's the first thing, is to focus on the future customer, something that's outside of your organization that everyone can rally around and understand. The second thing that I have found organizations do when they're very disruptive and sustain this is that they have a very strong belief system, a very strong sense of purpose, and everyone is aligned around this. There are very clear goals that people are trying to achieve together. There is a very clear strategy. There is a strong sense of what that purpose is, what you are trying to achieve together. And more importantly, there is a strong sense and belief of how we're going to do this and how we're going to take care of each other and sustain disruption day after day, week after week, month after year, and year after year. One of my favorite examples of this is Southwest Airlines. Again, very like every other airline is going through a huge amount of turmoil, but they're also in a really good position right now because they've been very careful with their business and with their cash. And when I spoke to them, and I've been speaking with them quite often because they're one of my long-term clients, is when I talk to them, they don't see themselves as one of the biggest airlines. They carry more passenger miles than any other airline in the United States. They see themselves as always behind because they measure themselves against the customers. and what their future customers are needing. And they constantly feel like there's so much more we can do. And that keeps them thinking of themselves as the maverick, as that disruptor who's going to go out there and redefine and continue to explore what that experience is like. And they've been at the very forefront of defining what travel looks like in a pandemic. So this is what keeps people going, is this, again, strong sense of who that future customer is, and also that strong belief in the sense of purpose. The third thing is the team that surrounds you. If you surround yourself with people who are focused on the same purpose, have the same beliefs, have that same unified view of who that future customer is, when your spirits flag, when you're getting tired and dispirited, your team is still going on, and they will be the ones that pick you up. One of the best things about starting and running Altimeter wasn't the fact that, being a CEO and a founder, that I got to call the shots. In many cases, I was the servant leader to make sure that everyone else was being productive and happy and operating really well. And so it wasn't so much that. The really great part of working at a company that you create, or of any company, is that you're working with people who are aligned with you in that strong sense of purpose and that strong sense of beliefs in your value systems. There's nothing better than coming to work every day knowing that everyone is doing this, putting their best effort into making something come true. So those are the three things that I find that disruptors and disruptive organizations do so well. They focus on their future customers. They make sure that everyone is aligned around a core sense of what that purpose is, core beliefs and values. And the third thing is they build a team of people who are united in those beliefs and values and purpose. It is nothing better than knowing that everyone is there and has your back when during those dark days. So I want to say hello to a couple other people. Jolene, thank you so much for joining us here in the United States, and Carlos from New Jersey, and Luis from Toronto. And we got Carla coming in from Brazil too. Thank you so much for joining. The last thing I want to part with is probably the most important thing to keep yourself going during these tough times. And that is really knowing that at the end of the day, after the end of every single day, week, month, whatever that time period is, you look back and you can say to yourself, I gave it my best effort. I did my best, because that's all you can give. What I find happens with disruptors is that there's an imbalance. There is such a strong sense of purpose, a strong sense to create that disruption, create that impact and change, that you throw yourself so into it that you've done your best, but you keep thinking to yourself, but I could just do more. I could always do more. But if you've already given your best, how much more can you give? And this is the final point that I want to make that disruptors know so well. They realize it's a marathon. They know that in order to be able to come back the next day, they need to be able to take care of themselves, maintain that energy in order to give their best effort the next day. It doesn't help you if you are working 80, 100 hours a week, week after week, day after day, because you won't be able to sustain that disruption. So this is one of the things I ask my children as they're growing up. They're now in college and thriving, even in the midst of this disruption. Somehow or another, they're able to do this. And I think one of the things is because one of the key things I would ask them is they would be done with their homework, they would be done with the project. And they were like, okay, I'm done. And I'm like, okay, great. Did you do your best? They're like, well, Mom, I can always do more. And I'm like, that wasn't my question, though. This is not about doing more. This is, did you do your best? When you look inside of yourself, did you give it your best effort? Because that's all that we can ever ask. And if that best effort resulted in the C, then so be it. If that best effort resulted in the A that they so desperately wanted, then that was great. But in the end, what we really want from ourselves and from our teams is, did we give it our best effort? And we only know that from ourselves. So I want to encourage you to think about how you are going to do this, because if you, the last point I want to make actually is that if you cannot do your best in an organization, if for whatever reason there's rules or bureaucracy, or you're not surrounded by people who share that same purpose and values, If you're not able to bring to bear the gifts that you have, the best efforts that you have, your passion for the change that you want to make, then you really need to consider whether you need to be in a different organization. And I say that with a certain level of understanding too, that we're in the middle of tremendous uncertainty. But I think also that this is a time of tremendous opportunity too. And there are organizations that are looking for people who have that passion and gifts and the values that you can bring to them. So take a look around, lift your head up from what you're doing today and say, are you in the place where you can do your best? Because if you're not, try to change that situation so that you can do your best, or find another situation in a place where those gifts can really come to bear. All right, so that's what I had for today. Just a couple of the people who have joined. Professor Rao, thank you so much for joining us. Gabrielle, thank you again. I'm glad you found this to be helpful. Priscilla coming in from Sao Paulo, Jacqueline from New York. We also have somebody coming in from Tanzania. Very international group again today. Again, I just want to encourage you. Thank you for joining this broadcast. But if you're listening to this, you probably chimed in thinking, I'm a disruptor. I want to create change, and I'm so tired. I'm so exhausted. I think, again, going back to the roots of what you are trying to do, that strong sense of purpose, focusing on that future, surrounding yourself with a team. But again, knowing that the only thing you can do at the end of the day is to give it your best effort. Really be careful with yourselves in these very turbulent times. I encourage you to take care of yourself, be very self-aware of when you're pushing that limit, because it's great to live at that edge, because that's where the magic happens, when we're out of our comfort zone. But you want to be able to stretch yourself, but not stress yourself. Because in the end, that stress day in, day out is not going to put you in a good place. So please take care of yourself. Be the disruptor that you were born to be, that you were meant to be. And I wish you all the best with your continued journey along your disruption journey. Thank you so much again for watching the broadcast. Take care.